Voluntary Assisted Dying and Ireland. I'm Mark, I'm a GP in Dublin, and I believe that voluntary assisted dying should be available in Ireland. It's become the norm in over 30 jurisdictions internationally, and it's increasingly becoming legal in more European countries. In this video, I'm going to outline where we are now in relation to VAD or voluntary assisted dying in Ireland. In this brief video about the Irish context to voluntary assisted dying, I'll outline some of the historical opposition to VAD, the current widespread support for VAD. I'll then talk about the political and policy context at play at the moment, and then I'll talk about what's next. By way of definitions, voluntary assisted dying and medical assistance in dying are synonyms. They both involve enabling a terminally unwell adult to voluntarily end their own life in a controlled and legal and dignified manner, typically with medical assistance. So this is only for those individuals who are unfortunately already dying of a terminal illness. In Ireland, VAD remains illegal despite public support, the Oireachtas Committee Parliamentary Committee support for legislation, and despite the growing evidence and availability of VAD internationally. To understand the history of voluntary assisted dying, certainly before 1990, one could look at the conservative Catholic Church and the conservative medical profession shaped by strong Catholic traditions, who viewed the sanctity of life as paramount, and that contributed to a culture and a legal environment that was resistant to any form of assisted dying. I would say that assisted dying was quite rare internationally before 1990, and it's really only since 2000 that availability internationally has happened. So our legal framework was really formed in that at that time in 1993, and whilst suicide itself was decriminalised in the Criminal Law Act in 1993, it maintained penalties for anyone assisting another person to die. Like many policies, it takes a brave individual to sometimes take the state to court to try and change a social policy and to try and agitate for a change. And the first person I'm going to talk about is Marie Fleming, who unfortunately died later on in 2013. So notably in this case, she sought orders permitting her to lawfully be assisted to have a peaceful and dignified death at the time of her choice, without the risk of prosecution for anyone who had helped her. The case was rejected by the High Court, and the seven-judge Supreme Court ruled the right to life under the Constitution does not import a right to die, in what was described by them as a very tragic case. So the Supreme Court ruled that the Constitution does not contain either a right to suicide or arrange for the end of one's life. So it did state that it is up to the Oireachtas to legislate for this policy change, but that was Marie Fleming, and she unfortunately passed away later that year. Marie Fleming stated that she came to court today whilst I still can use my speech, my voice, to ask you to assist me in having a peaceful, dignified death in the arms of Tom and my children. The second of three individuals I'm going to mention today is Gail O'Rourke. So Gail was acquitted in 2015 of 3 counts of assisting in the suicide of her friend Bernadette Ford. Ford, like Marie Fleming, had advanced multiple sclerosis, and Ford died in 2011 after taking a lethal dose of medication that was ordered from abroad. So Gail O'Rourke was acquitted, and she is one of the many high-profile cases that have kind of led to the public support shifting in this area. The third prominent individual I'm going to mention is Vicky Phelan, who was prominent for multiple multiple areas of kind of health and social change, particularly regarding cervical check. And Vicky Phelan became quite prominent in the voluntary assisted dying debate. She said that she supported the 2020 Dying with Dignity bill because she believed the time was right to have a debate on the issue of dying with dignity. We voted overwhelmingly in 2018 in favour of repealing the Eighth Amendment to remove the constitutional ban on abortion. I'm hoping that the people of Ireland and the 160 TDs who serve us will support this bill to allow people like me who are terminally ill to end my life peacefully when the time comes. And I guess those patient advocates shifted public opinion. And really what we've seen in the last 5 years is that there is widespread public support for voluntary assisted dying. There's consistently around less than 20% opposed, and there's always around north of 60, sometimes 70% of individuals in support of a variety of models of voluntary assisted dying. So where does that leave the politics? John Halligan was a TD before 2020 who was very prominent in speaking about voluntary assisted dying and continuing his advocacy. The People Before Profit TD, Gino Kelly, introduced the Dying with Dignity bill in 2020, and it aimed to legalise assisted dying for terminally unwell adults. The bill passed the second stage of the Dáil, but it was referred to an Oireachtas committee on justice for further scrutiny. And in 2021, the bill stalled. The committee deemed it needed broader consultation and legal refinement. So a joint Oireachtas committee was formed, the Joint Committee on Assisted Dying, established in 2023 to review the matter comprehensively, and it had cross-party representation, 14 members, and it received multiple public submissions. It had 70 witnesses, including our group, Irish Doctors Supporting Medical Assistance in Dying, and the witnesses spanned law, medicine, ethics. And in summary, at the end of 14 months in 2024, the report stated that it recommended that VAD should be legalised in restricted circumstances. That was the majority report. So to outline those recommendations, it recommended that we should legislate for assisted dying for those with incurable, irreversible, advanced progressive illness expected to lead to death within 6 months, or 12 months for an advanced neurodegenerative condition such as motor neuron disease. It had strict eligibility safeguards. There were 2 formal requests needed from the patient, and mandatory assessment of capacity was needed, tests of voluntariness, possibly psychiatric reviews if there was an issue about capacity. A patient must be a resident of Ireland, must be an adult. Mental health was excluded as a qualifying condition. So there were multiple safeguards, and this just reflects what's happening internationally, like in New Zealand and in Canada. There were robust coercion safeguards, and there were protections for those who would conscientiously object, and there were commitments to strengthen palliative care. So that all sounds mostly very positive. So where are we now? In October 2024, the Dáil voted 76 to 53 to just accept the report, not to enact the legislation. Support, again, I would say, was cross-party. Sinn Féin, People for Profit, Labour, Social Democrats, and some members of the coalition from Fingal and Fingal were also, and the Green Party were also supporters. The government committed to pre-legislative scrutiny, including potential publication of draft legislation ahead of the next general election. So it's looking really positive. Like many countries internationally, the momentum is shifting. And where are we now? The general election was held on the 29th of November, and the 34th Dáil was formed. And then the programme for government stated that there was no mention of VAD at all. So the 33rd Dáil had was roughly the same as the 34th Dáil. There was Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael and Independents. It just didn't have the Green Party. So it's essentially the same government. And despite all this momentum, despite the Oireachtas Committee, despite the government's commitment, again, the programme for government had no mention of voluntary assisted dying at all. So that's essentially where we are now. We have the societal desire for policy change and repeated opinion polls. The Irish public want the government to legislate for voluntary assisted dying. We have multiple models internationally of how we can implement and provide VAD in Ireland. It's not complicated. We can follow countries like New Zealand, Australia, or aspects of the Canadian model. We even have our own Oireachtas or parliamentary committees recommending legislation. But we have a government that has ignored public opinion, ignored international evidence, and what is very challenging is it's ignored its own parliamentary processes that have recommended that VAD should be progressed in Ireland. And I say that is kind of a shameful and wasteful approach of the current government that they've taken on this topic. I think we need our government to reflect public opinion, to abide by its own parliamentary committee recommendations, and to commit to draw up legislation, to enact legislation to provide for VAD. I'd recommend that you follow advocacy groups. You could follow our own group, Irish Doctors That Support MAID. You could follow End of Life Ireland. And I'd say there are also other videos that I've done to support voluntary assisted dying advocacy in Ireland, such as how the model could work in Ireland, international models of care, and also relating to some of the ethical issues at play. So thanks for watching this.